There are a lot of different ways to roleplay in a game like New Vegas, and I guess that's why they call it a role-playing game. From gunslinger to beefy melee combatant, the world is at your fingers, but what if you decided to play a little bit more spontaneous? Can you beat Fallout New Vegas as an impulsive maniac? So let's discuss what this means exactly. The idea behind this challenge is that every time I see a weapon, some armor, or any consumables, I have to use them. It doesn't matter if they are static items in the world or on a corpse. This means if I have a suit of combat armor and a 44 Magnum, and I killed a powder ganger, I'd be stuck wearing the powder ganger armor and using whatever his weapon was until I found some new ones. This creates some very interesting scenarios. There are a few rules to go over, so let's do that. 1. I have to use any weapon, armor, or consumable I see, thus replacing my current items. If someone is alive or friendly, they do not count unless they are an enemy, in which case I must kill them and use their stuff. If a person had one or more weapons or suits of armor, I can pick and choose which one to use. If my weapon runs out of ammo or breaks, I can use my fists. I can also opt to use my fists if the weapon I have is incredibly bad, but if I do that I have to drop the weapon. Also, not a rule, but I usually dropped the equipment I couldn't use just to make things easier for myself. That's it. It's also set to very hardcore. Ready? Let's go. I wake up on Doc Mitch's table and decide on the name Impulsive Earl. Earl is crazy, but the ladies love him. When I could move around, I got to work grabbing any consumables that weren't nailed down, and since I didn't have the Pip-Boy yet, I would have to wait a minute to use them. Special allocation was actually quite strange this time. For the most part, I'd be using an amalgamation of weapons, so I couldn't just go all in on one of the specials like strength or agility. Instead, I opted for a luck of 10 and an endurance of 8. The high luck was specifically for getting crits, since I would most likely be stuck using shoddy weapons, and all the extra damage I could get would help. Everything else was pretty baseline. I answered the doc's questions and chose my skills, which were also pretty different from the norm. I picked energy weapons, guns, and melee. These would be the types of weapons I'd mainly be using. I also picked built to destroy and skilled as my traits. Now that I was ready, I looted anything else I missed and used my consumables. Then I left for the wider world. For now, I was stuck using a straight razor and wearing a vault suit, pre-war hat, and some reading glasses. I looted everything that I could see available to me, and now's a good time to mention I'm not a perfect machine. I'm bound to look at something and not grab it, because I just wasn't paying attention. I eventually entered the saloon and talked to Sunny Smiles for a bit. I wasn't going to do this quest really, but I wanted a varmint rifle. I also had to kill this guy so he wouldn't see me stealing all of the booze from the bar, which just so happened to include a 357 revolver. Also a good time to tell you that my character was wasted pretty much the whole game. It's quite funny. Back outside I was given a rifle and I shot some bottles. From there I talked to Trudy about Ringo and made my way up to the gas station. We chatted for a bit, then I took all of his stuff, including this ammo that counts as stealing. He was not happy and I had to put him in his place. Now I was Ringo, caravan man extraordinaire. Since Ringo was now dead, there wasn't much left for me to do in Goodsprings, so I left for Prim. I had the choice of not killing the powder gangers, but I wanted some XP. Sadly, I lost my 9mm for a police baton, but I could manage. The others up ahead weren't too bad to deal with, and I leveled up. I put the points into guns and picked intense training, and upped my intelligence. By the way, this is what I looked like right now. So handsome. Once I actually made it to Prim, I was attacked by the NCR guard due to my powder ganger outfit, and sometimes I forget how bad dynamite actually is. I eventually killed the trooper and played dress-up with his belongings. On the walk to the Vicky and Vance, I had to disarm some frag mines, which I then had to use as a weapon. I suppose it could have been worse. I wasn't sure what the townsfolk of Prim would think of me dressed as a convict, wielding a lead pipe, but they didn't seem to care. I talked to Nash for a while and made my way around the casino, looting everything I could see. This included the safes in the back that everyone was guarding for some reason, making this much more difficult than it needed to be. But I got it in the end. I was really hoping I would get to use the 9mm submachine gun, but right after I picked it up, I saw a switchblade, so that's what I was going to kill more convicts with. The first few were pretty easy to deal with, but for once, I was having some actual troubles with them. The large group in the back were not having it today, and after a few failed attempts, I went upstairs hoping to find some more useful equipment. Thankfully, these guys were much easier to kill, and after a lot of murder, outfit changing, and needless drug addiction, I had some brass knuckles and looked like a goober. Back downstairs, and all was well, except for the leader. I made a bad save, and had to work a lot harder than I would have liked to so I could escape. If I wanted to kill these goons, I would need a better weapon, and I knew where one was. I made my way to the sheriff's house, put on his clothes, and grabbed the cowboy repeater. Much easier. When everyone was dead, I made sure Beagle couldn't live to tell the tale, mostly because he was wearing leather armor and I wanted it. Then it was time to go to Nipton. I was praying I wouldn't get jumped by powder gangers, and was glad I didn't. I killed as many ants as I could and leveled up to 3, putting the points into guns and melee. Then I turned my gaze to Nipton. I had a few star bottle caps, so I got to kill Thomas for his gun and armor. Then I got ready for a very difficult choice. A choice no one should ever have to make. A choice that will be talked about for millennia to come. Do I kill Oliver Swanwick? I was decked out in leather armor with a 10mm pistol to boot. Not a bad loadout for the beginning of the game, but do I throw it all away to kill God's worst mistake? I pondered for a moment. I suppose it's true what they say. There is a first for everything. After that emotionally draining moment, I talked with Vulpus and agreed to spread word of his actions in Nipton. Not only for experience, but I was siding with the Legion this time too, for very specific reasons, which I will get to when the time comes. I made sure to avoid the gang members on the way to the outpost, and killed a few more ants to boot. When I arrived at the outpost, I talked to Killborn and Ghost. I also took Ranger Jackson's quest to kill some ants, which would be a bit more difficult since I was out of ammo, but I found a tire iron in a cabinet, which eased my pain a little. Once the ants were dead, I leveled to 4 and put the points into melee weapons and unarmed. I picked the Iron Fist perk, which is added in via the Tale of Two Wastelands mod, and returned to Ranger Jackson for my reward, which was a surface rifle and some ammo. My time here was done, and it was onto the Valley of the Bighorner and Vipers. Sadly, the ammo I was given was armor-piercing, so it was crap against the Bighorner I was killing, but I made do, and kept enough ammo to deal with the Vipers coming up. I should also mention that I had eaten like 15 pieces of uncooked Bighorner meat at this point, so that's the type of man my character is. The first 2 Vipers looked like this, and I stupidly killed the one in metal armor first. Now I had some decent armor and a lever-action rifle, for about 5 seconds. Once I killed the other Viper, I was stuck with a grenade rifle and a merc outfit. Further along, I killed another Viper and was rewarded a 10mm SMG, which would be very handy for my next fight. I didn't actually get the chance to use that gun, as I watched my Legion brethren get decimated by wandering merchants, but I did have some new armor and spears. More Vipers ahead, and the first one didn't stand a chance against my spear. The next one was killed by a 9mm SMG, and the last one was killed with a tire iron. I tell you, this weapon swapping was starting to give me whiplash. I ignored the larger group of Vipers to my side and went straight to Novak. I stopped by Cliff's shop and looted everything I could except for that gun. Continuing on my way to Vegas, I only got to kill a few fire ants before I ran out of ammo. Thankfully, the Lonesome Drifter was here and didn't mind me taking his mysterious magnum. From there, it was to the 188, where I drank like a man dying, and then I waltzed over to Boulder City to confront Jessup. After a short, sweet conversation, I leveled up to 5 and put the points into unarmed again. I did end up killing Jessup and Pal so I could peacefully take all of the consumables lying around, and I left to let the NCR do its job, but not before grabbing a suit of NCR trooper armor for myself. I was in bad shape, so I stopped by Novak to heal up with Dr. Strauss. Back to the 188 for the long walk to Vegas, and for once, nothing happened on the way there. No Bighorner, no Legion hit squad, just peace and quiet. As usual, I stopped by the sacked caravan for some combat armor, and for some reason decided to use the knife that was on the same corpse as the plasma rifle. Looking back at it now, it would have been a better idea to loot the caravan later, as I had to take the monorail to the strip, but now I didn't have an NCR disguise to help me. Of course, that didn't matter as the monorail guards only took a few potshots at me, and I arrived in the strip in pretty good shape. Victor stopped me as usual and told me to head to the Lucky 38. I did so, but only for the loot that was there, such as copious amounts of drugs, alcohol, and scoped 44 magnums. I actually leveled up to 6 here, I'm assuming it had something to do with the drug-related challenge, and put the points into unarmed and energy weapons. As is common for me at level 6, I picked the toughness perk. Some more looting, which left me with golden gloves. I was pretty dehydrated, so I left for a moment to go buy some water and came back to talk to Mr. House. We all know the drill at this point, so let's get down to it. I had to kill Benny, of course, but I didn't like my chances if I went in guns blazing. So I did something that I don't normally do, and went back to Good Spring Cemetery to grab the fancy cigarette butts that Benny left there. I already had the lighter from Jessup, so it was as easy as going to the tops and showing Swank the evidence. Yada yada yada, search Benny's room for clues, talk to Yes Man, return to Swank, and say that I have to assassinate Benny. Now Benny would be located in his suite upstairs. I went up, chatted for a second, and started beating him with the golden gloves. He only lasted 5 punches before being knocked out, and that was that. I took his gun and clothes, and for all intents and purposes, was now Benny, though I was much more handsome. Level 7, points into guns and energy weapons. Since my luck was 10, I decided to bankrupt both the Tops and the Gamora for money. I wanted to get some implants since I couldn't really do much else with my money. I returned to Mr. House, making sure to give Jane the 2 snow globes I've collected so far, and watched a Securitron demonstration for the millionth time. But this time it was worth it as I got a 9mm SMG. Next stop was Caesar's, but I first made sure to bug the Lucky 38 for the followers, and may or may not have killed Mr. House, so I didn't have to take a trip back later. This leveled me to 8, points in unarmed and the 2nd rank of toughness perk. Nothing exciting happened on my way to Cottonwood Cove, just a few Bighorner and a singular fire gecko. Once I made it to Cottonwood, I immediately left for the fort since I had no business here. When I finally met up with Caesar, he wanted me to destroy Mr. House's bunker. I obliged, and made my way there for what I thought would be an easy job. Oh, how wrong I was. I knew there would be a plasma rifle in here, so I grabbed it and looted the ammo boxes too. There were grenades inside, which I didn't know, and I was stuck with 5 pulse grenades, which are good, but not good enough for the job I needed to do. I tried it with just the plasma rifle, and while it worked pretty well, I didn't have ammo to fight the sentry bots, and I couldn't run past them without dying. I gave it a few more tries with no success, and was getting a bit fed up. I threw a pulse grenade by the door that had the sentry bots in it, and to my surprise, it damaged them. I had to give it a couple of attempts, but I eventually killed all 4 of the sentry bots inside of the room with only the 5 pulse grenades. After that, it was as easy as grabbing the convenient plasma grenades in the other ammo box. I returned to Caesar with the news, and was very glad I didn't have to go back to the strip to kill Mr. House, though I would have to go convince the boomers to aid us when the time came. I leveled to 9 and put the points into guns. Instead of going straight to Nellis, I opted to find the New Vegas Medical Clinic so I could steal all of their magazines and get the DT implant and the regeneration implant, both of which were incredibly helpful. When I arrived outside of Nellis, I was a bit scared as I usually have some turbo to help me, but since I take all of the drugs I have as soon as I get them, I was in for a ride. Thankfully, I am a persistent man, and death just means a reload. Once I was inside, I talked with Pearl and got ready for the Valaire quest by taking everything that wasn't nailed down. First, I talked with Pete about the rich heritage of the boomers. Next, I talked to Loyal about the broken solar arrays. Then I went down into the generator to start Ant misbehaving. I was a bit worried since I had a grenade rifle for this part, but it only took a few broken limbs to find a sledgehammer. While the sledgehammer made sure the ants didn't explode, it didn't do so much damage with my broken arms, so it took a very long time. Once I was done, I made my way back to the dry lake close to Helios and was gifted with a hunting rifle after I killed the Viper. This allowed me to take some time killing a few fire ants so I could get some experience, food, and sweet, sweet fire ant nectar. By the way, my character was so addicted to drugs in this playthrough, I actually managed to get the challenge done for being addicted 50 times total. When I arrived at Helios, I took the side door since the NCR was not very fond of me and got to work grabbing the parts I needed. Back to Nellis, and I repaired all of the solar arrays and made my way back to Loyal. Notice how my character is looking down at the ground here. That's so I can avoid grabbing a bunch of stuff that I don't want to at the moment. If I can't see it, I don't have to pick it up, right? After the convo with Loyal, I leveled to 10, put the points into guns, and picked the finesse perk. I returned to Mother Pearl so I could start the quest to get the bomber out of the water, and drank deeply from her toilet even though there was literally a sink right next to it. As we all know, this part of Valaire is pretty easy. I just go for a swim, attach the ballast to the plane, and detonate it when I'm on the land. Back to Nellis to complete the quest, and we're done here. I made my way back to the fort so I could talk to Caesar about my next quest. I was to get the white gloves to side with Caesar, which would take some skill. I also made sure to grab Vulpus and Lucius's quest here, which meant I had to go straight back to Nellis to grab the howitzer part, but it'll be worth it during the final fight. Once I arrived at the Ultralux, I was in for a treat. There was a lot of alcohol and soda for me to drink, so I got to work moving it all into a more secure location so I could take it. This is what that pile looked like, and after I was done with it, I was very dehydrated. I still took the time to talk to Marjorie, who was not interested in an alliance, but Mortimer was, though I wouldn't be able to convince him until I had a higher strip reputation. So you know what that means. It was time to collect vault suits for Sarah Weintraub. This is one of the many ways to raise your strip rep, and it also means I can work with the Brotherhood for a bit, in case I run into any power armor and actually want to wear it, though the chances of that happening are practically zero. I hadn't discovered Hidden Valley yet, so I had to walk there, which gave me the chance to kill a few Pottergangers. Now I was disguised and had some powder charges. Oh boy, what fun. Once I arrived at Hidden Valley, I entered the bunker, had my clothes forcibly removed, and was taken to Elder McNamara. I was told I had to get rid of a nearby ranger, and I did so by breaking his radio. Back to the Elder, and my next task was to collect some holologs from lost patrols. I made sure to steal a super sledge before I left, and went to the closest one first. Dealing with the centaurs was quite easy with my sledge, and I grabbed what I needed, including a fancy new laser rifle, and went on my way. Sadly, I can't actually equip power armor, so I had to leave it behind, but I'm not really counting it against me. The next stop was back to Nellis, so I could grab a new set of combat armor to replace my Powderganger disguise. While I was here, I also made sure to grab the hololog and was ready to go to Repcon HQ for the last one. I had to walk there and got caught in a fight between the NCR and the Fiends. The NCR was doing poorly, so I stole his outfit and continued onward towards more Fiends. Fiends were actually quite a challenge in this playthrough, as once you kill one you're stuck with the crappy armor they had, and usually the crappy weapons too. I made do for the first few Fiends, but I was in bad shape, so I decided to head back to the strip for a bit of gambling at the Ultralux. Once I got banned for playing, I went to the medical clinic and got patched up. I also bought the Intelligence, Endurance, Agility, and Perception implants. I was going to buy the Strength one, but I was a few caps off. I only ran into a singular Fiend on the way to Repcon and entered. There were a lot of Fiend corpses inside, all of which I looted. I ended up with a laser rifle, so not too bad, and I waited for the tour guide to finish his rambling so I could grab the card. Not much else to say after that. I made it to the 3rd floor easily, got the hololog, and was back to the Elder. Next on my plate was to contact the 3 Brotherhood scouts located throughout the Mojave, which was very easy, though I did end up in Powderganger armor again, which sucked. The last set of quests I needed to do involved going to 3 different vaults for parts that the bunker needed to survive. This was the only reason I did any of these quests in the first place. Since I knew some of these vaults would be difficult, I stopped back at Nellis for another suit of combat armor. I would have to be wise as to when I would use these, as there were only a few left now. The first vault I was going to was Vault 22. I was worried about the walk there, but was very pleased I didn't get berated by fiends or cazadors. The mantis were a hassle, as they always are, and since my repair wasn't at 50, I had to go through the vault the normal way, which meant I had to kill plenty of spore carriers. To make a long story short, this vault was pretty easy until I got to the lower section. There were a lot of spore carrier brutes here, and since I never had any stims on hand since I have to immediately use them when I get them, it was rough. I eventually opted to drop the pool cue and use my bare hands to defeat the spore carriers, and it actually worked quite well. After that, it was a short walk to the part I needed, and I was gone. The next stop was Vault 11, which lo and behold had Mantis in it. To say the least, a vault suit is not a very good choice of armor. So I stopped back at Nellis for another suit of combat armor. This made it easier, but you never know true disappointment until you have to trade your nice armor for some NCR armor. Not much else after that, I just looted some vault suits and got the part I needed. I was about as close to death as you could be, so I went to Good Springs and got patched up by Doc Mitch. The last vault I needed to go to was Vault 3, home of the Fiends. I was not looking forward to this at all, and with good reason. I had a vault suit on still and did not have a good weapon. I decided that I should probably get something better than I had and went to Gene's skydiving so I could open the weapons locker. I ended up with some boxing gloves, but a nice powderganger walked in and I left with the 9mm instead. This created a new problem though. The closest place to Vault 3 was Camp McCarran, and I was dressed as a powderganger. Yeah, lots of problems with that. After enough death at the hands of the NCR, I went into a random Good Springs house to grab literally anything clothing-wise. Now the NCR wouldn't kill me, but the Fiends still would. I'd say all in all, I jumped back to the medical clinic about 3 times before I actually made it into the vault. It was pretty bad. It wasn't much better once I was inside either. I had a varmint rifle, and in case you didn't know, it's garbage against fiends. I died pretty much immediately and decided I need a better weapon to start this off. I went back to Cottonwood Cove and grabbed Recompense of the Fallen, which was a pretty good weapon. Back to Vault 3, and I was ready as I'll ever be. Honestly, there was way too much weapon changing to tell you about it, but it pretty much went like this. I get a good weapon, I get a bad weapon. I get a good weapon, I get a bad weapon. Rinse and repeat. I actually didn't even bother finishing this vault. I just grabbed however many vault suits I could, and left. Back to Sarah with all of my vault suits, and I was able to get my strip reputation up to liked, which was all I needed. I went back to Mortimer, and I had to help him get a new person to eat, or kill the one he already had, and frame the murder on his own father. I went with the latter, and made my way into the Ultralux kitchens. There was a lot of food and alcohol here, which I ate. Imagine drinking 25 bottles of wine in a row. That's what I did. After I gave myself irreversible brain damage, I punched Ted Gunderson to death and grabbed some of his blood so I could splash it around his father's hotel room. His guards were not too happy about that. I punched one to death, stole a shotgun and clothes, and took care of the other one. I splashed Ted's blood all around and informed the Securitron of what happened. Heck Gunderson resisted arrest, got killed, and I took his gun and clothing for my own. Back to Mortimer with the good news, and all I had to do was wait a few hours so I could talk to Marjorie about an alliance with Caesar. Now it's time to go back to Caesar with the news that the White Gloves are interested in an alliance. He was pleased, and my next task was to deal with the Brotherhood. Pretty simple. I didn't want to finish their quest at this point, so I just self-destructed the bunker. Easy as pie. Back to Caesar, and it was time to get him what he needed so he could remove that pesky brain tumor. Sadly, I had a terrible medicine skill, so I had to attempt to get the auto dock in his tent up and running. Yeah, notice how I said attempt. The vault it was located in had a lot of feral ghouls, and I had a not-so-good weapon that was running out of ammo. To put it bluntly, I couldn't do it. I didn't want to let Caesar die, so I loaded a save prior to our conversation and decided to get my medicine skill up. That would take a while. I started by doing some of the quests I had, like Vulpus's, and actually finishing Boulder City Showdown. I went back to Prim so I could set up Prim Slim as sheriff, even though it took a lot of looking for the parts I needed. I also took the time to kill pretty much whatever I could. Ants, Bighorner, you name it. I was killing it. After I domed enough Bighorner, I hit level 13. Points into medicine, of course. I still needed to level up some more, so I went up towards Jacobstown to kill some more Bighorner, and even stopped in town to loot a little bit. Not satisfied with how much experience I was earning, I decided to do the King's Quest, which I'm not even going to bother going over. Except for the part where I went to the NCR food outpost. I had to eat all of the food, of course, so I spent a very long time moving items. Just look at that pile of food, Jesus Christ! I was pretty close to leveling up after this quest, so I went back into the hills around Jacobstown. I'm dressed as a king member, by the way, so you know I did it in style. I finally hit level 14, my medicine was still garbage, but at least I was able to get Mysterious Stranger. As soon as I picked this perk, I completely forgot that I had it, which really sucks. I was fairly certain at this point that I wouldn't be able to get my medicine high enough in a timely fashion, so I went back to Caesar so I could attempt to get the autodoc fixed again. That's right, all of what I just did was pretty much a waste. Like, actually. I would be able to redeem it if I chose a different perk that I actually remembered I had, but since I picked Mysterious Stranger and completely forgot about it, this was truly pointless. At least I was much more prepared for the ghouls in the vault this time. I had a 10mm SMG and plenty of ammo. It's actually funny, if I would have gone just a little deeper into the vault last time I tried, I would have found plenty of 10mm SMGs. I actually hate myself. It was pretty easy at this point, and I had the part I needed before I knew it. Back to Caesar to fix his brain owie, and it was time to assassinate President Kimball. I leveled to 15 and put the points into melee weapons, which was a good thing. I was expecting to run into a lot more trouble than I did while assassinating President Kimball. Thankfully, the guy you meet up with gives you some NCR trooper armor, so I didn't have to worry about that. After I was disguised and ready to go, I pulled out my 10mm SMG. Not a very good weapon for this, as you can see. There was a sniper above me, so I reloaded and killed him for his trail carbine. I saw some red marks on my compass, but they passed and no one was the wiser. Also, look at how big this hat is on Earl, it looks ridiculous. Killing Kimball was very easy with the carbine, and I was able to fast travel immediately. Bad idea on my part, as I forgot I was wearing NCR armor, and the Legion was not happy about that. I reloaded and went to Gene's skydiving instead to kill the respawn powdergangers. Now the Legion wouldn't kill me on sight, and I was ready for the Battle of Hoover Dam. Before I talked to the Legate, I scrounged around for some Legion armor and a 9mm pistol. Once I was ready, I let the Legion do most of the work for me. The whole walk across the dam pretty much consisted of me changing my weapon back and forth between the 12.7mm pistol and the sniper rifle. All in all, it was pretty easy. The difficulty didn't start to crank up until I was actually in the dam. Now instead of regular troopers, I was fighting heavy NCR troopers. I was able to kill the first one I saw quite easily with the sneak critical, and now I had some pretty decent armor. Once again, I was caught between the 12.7mm pistol and the sniper, but occasionally I would kill an NCR veteran ranger and get a hunting revolver. I was also wearing some ranger combat armor now, which was pretty awesome. It was time. I dropped a save in front of the door that led to Oliver, and went in. So, I've said this before in a few of my challenges, but I think this one takes the cake. This was, without a doubt, the hardest portion of New Vegas I have ever played in my life. It would seem that all of the stars aligned perfectly for this part, so I would be in excruciating agony for the next hour. Let's start, shall we? First, I have no HP left. Second, there were quite a few NCR troopers, and while they only had service rifles, I was a good shoulder tap away from death. Not to mention, once I killed one, I had to take his weapon and armor, which means I dropped one of the best pistols in the game for one of the worst rifles. This I could deal with. As long as I remained in some semblance of cover, I was good, and I even got the chance to heal myself by drinking 10 gallons of water from the faucet. I got the crap scared out of me when I turned, and saw an NCR trooper patiently watching me drink all of this water. Once I killed him, it was time to move up to the second floor, which I was very nervous about. There are very hard to kill NCR veteran rangers here, some of which had anti-materia rifles. I'm not sure exactly what I did here, but when I started shooting the NCR ranger, I kept getting sneak criticals, which is really weird. I wasn't mad about it, just confused. Now's when it starts to get real. There are explosives everywhere, and for some reason I couldn't see them, and they just kept blowing me up. I found the proper way to avoid them, and looted the ranger for his weapon and 10 super stims. This is the only reason I joined the Legion instead of Mr. House or the NCR. When you're fighting the Legion, they don't have very good healing items, but these guys did. Of course, I still had to take all 10 super stims at once, but I didn't care. With the anti-materia rifle in my hands, I dropped a save on the stairs and waited for Oliver to open the doors. He had a squad of NCR heavy troopers, and they were much more difficult to kill than the last ones I fought. I don't even know how many times I died trying to fight these assholes. Way too many to bother counting. For some reason, every time I died and had to reload a save, all of the explosives would go off again, and I have no idea why, but it did nothing to help the foul mood I was in at this point. After enough reloads, I did manage to get a sneak critical on a heavy trooper and killed him. This netted me a super sludge, but I was in a very bad place now. I was almost dead again, and the heavy troopers were using super sludges too. I was cornered, and even though I could knock back the heavies most of the time, they still got close enough to one-shot me. Over and over and over again. At this point, I'm fairly certain the friends I was chatting with at the time were quite worried about my sanity. Eventually, out of sheer luck, I was able to kill one of the troopers down here. It didn't help as much as you think it would. The only way I could kill the other one was by knocking him down with a mauler attack. I thought I was done, but I went back upstairs and there were more heavy troopers. Thankfully, I got the chance to fight them one at a time, and it wasn't so bad, especially after I got the LMG. After that, I traded my LMG for a Super Sludge again and came back down to kill the last NCR Ranger, who was still bugged. 10 more Super Stims, and the walk back downstairs to kill the last NCR Trooper was now possible with all of the explosions. It's kinda funny that I sided with the Legion and the last outfit I'm wearing is the NCR Trooper armor. With that, I walked back out and was greeted by the Legate, and I beat Fallout New Vegas as an Impulsive Maniac. Everything about this challenge was incredibly fun, except for the last part, that is. It makes you play in a way that most people don't normally play. Instead of focusing on specific weapon types and armor types, you have to use them all the time. You have to come up with solutions to problems you didn't think you'd have, and proper healing is hard to get. That was actually the biggest part of this challenge that I never really brought up. If I would have allowed myself to carry extra stims, this would have been much easier, and I'm glad I didn't. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and comment. Also, think about subscribing as that helps me out a lot. Check out the Discord and Patreon, links below. We have a lot of fun in the Discord, and the Patreon is there if you feel like supporting me in a different way. And if you join, you'll get your name said at the end of videos, like this. Thanks to Braden Watson, Riley Anderson, Dr. Maritimus, and Anonymous. Y'all are the best. And until next time, stay safe out there, and peace out.